Hi guys, my name's John and I'm a trained biologist and veterinarian. And today we're talking about career paths into working with wild, long-tailed macaques in the Philippines. My guest is Leif Eriksson Gamallo, a wildlife biologist and teacher with several affiliations. So what can you expect in the next half hour? This is not a natural history documentary, nor is it a behind-the-scenes type making-of film about how wildlife documentaries are produced. Instead, what we'll present is a possible career path if you want to work with monkeys. It's an interview in which I ask the questions I wished I'd asked 35 years ago when starting my wildlife career. And before we go any further, I would like to say thank you to my subscribers. Without you, there would be no channel. Working with wild monkeys and living the dream looks like this. Leif, how would you describe long-tailed macaque conservation today?
Okay, so the conservation of long-tailed macaques has been challenging because of several factors, and one factor of this is the ongoing debates involving the placement of the monkey, of the long-tailed macaque, in as a threatened species. And in the Philippines, most conservation efforts and activities are conducted locally with no clear national plan to conserve long-tailed macaques. And in my experience in my project, which we aim to understand the ecology and understand the challenges that involves in conserving long-tailed macaques in the Philippines, there are still negative narratives towards the species in some areas. For example, macaques has always been viewed as a nuisance in some farms, and even conservation practitioners and researchers view them. I mean, has still this narrative, the negative narrative towards the species. But even with these conservation challenges and complexities, macaque conservation offers a model for conserving animals on how to conserve animals in the Anthropocene, in the modern era, as they are very adaptive and they are opportunistic.
Leif, what jobs with macaques does this situation generate?
So, studying long-tailed macaques offers some jobs, and this includes research, being a field workers or technical experts, and even consultants. Moreover, in the community where you study long-tailed macaques, this may also help the some people through information sharing, where they can be partners in conservation and research.
Leif, what do you do?
Currently, I'm an assistant professor in the University of the Philippines, Mindanao. That's the southern part of the Philippines where I teach and study Philippine wildlife biodiversity. And currently, I'm doing my PhD in the University of the Sunshine Coast, where I want to understand how animals use reforested sites in the Philippines and providing insights on how reforestation can maximize biodiversity conservation for wildlife. I have a vast range of interest in studying vertebrates that includes reptiles, amphibians, birds, and mammals. But I have a very special interest in studying non-human primates that includes the monkeys, tarsiers, and slow loris. So my studies in long-tailed macaques are mainly focused on behaviors and ecology.
Leaf, what skills do you need to work with macaques?
Actually, different skills are needed in research and conservation involving long-tailed macaques. First of all, I would like to highlight the communication skills that needed in order to communicate your research and your intent to different stakeholders. Of course, your research skills, your technical skills, and this needs a lot of passion and dedication because field biology is very tiring and physically draining, but at the same time I can say that it's fulfilling, especially when it aligns with your passion. However, after collecting your data, it does not stop there. The journey does not stop after collection data. You need to write reports and share your data with the stakeholders and others through maybe publications. That's another set of skills that you need in this type of work. And I would like to highlight that from writing, from collection of data, more questions can be generated that can fuel your curiosity.
How can new entrants acquire these skills, Leaf?
I have the privilege as an assistant professor in my university to teach the skills to my students. I think that's how new entrants can have the skills. And I would also like to point out that the challenges in macaque research and conservation takes time and a lot of effort. Thus, mentorship, collaboration, and even data sharing are essential in this kind of work. I even consider myself still acquiring new skills, and I learned a lot of my skills right now in studying monkeys through collaboration. And also attended a lot of trainings from known researchers in the field.
And Leaf, do you do it for personal satisfaction, professional recognition, or the money?
I think in this line of work, it's a mix of several reasons actually, such as personal satisfaction, passion, eagerness to contribute to science, and personal goals in life. And in my case, in my experience, I think money is not a big reason because in some past work, I even used my personal funds in order to go to the field, for example. This might be changing right now with some salaries in for field biologists are becoming more competitive. But I think what pushes me and other field researchers in this kind of work is the passion and the eagerness to contribute to conservation of these animals, including long-tailed macaques. And personally, my family, friends, and students, even students, are keep pushing me and give me motivation despite of these challenges.
Leaf, how did your career develop?
So I consider my career as still developing, but in my early career days during my masters in the University of the Philippines, Los Baños, I volunteered in several research groups in order to gain more skills. And in terms of primatology, I received several trainings, including one from the International Primatological Society. And this opened a lot of networks, a lot of collaborations that developed or helped my career to be developed as of now. And I think it's also important in this kind of work that you need to present your research in some conferences and published in several journals.
And Leaf, what is your most treasured possession in your field kit?
I think it's my camera because I love photography. I mean, I like taking photos of wildlife behavior and documenting wildlife species in new areas. And this camera has even helped me in some of my natural history notes and short note publications involving monkeys and other wildlife species. Because in if you want to publish a short note for a rare and interesting behavior, it needs to be documented. And I even used some of these photos in photo exhibits in the Philippines, back in the Philippines, to highlight my area's biodiversity.
Leaf, do you need a master's or even a PhD to work with primates, or is a first degree or even no degree enough?
Yes, of course, they are very much enough. For example, I generated many publications even without my PhD. However, sometimes funding agencies and even employers might look at PhD holder as more qualified, with some implications of careers, particularly for early career researchers. And this is based on my experience back in the Philippines. But again, if generation of knowledge and information for research and conservation of macaques and other wildlife, a young researcher with bachelor's and master's with the right skills is enough in the field. But I do encourage younger people to pursue higher degrees for personal and academic growth.
Leaf, what issues would you like to see addressed in long-tailed macaque conservation in the next 5 years?
I think the most basic thing to do to conserve long-tailed macaques is to increase the research effort. In the Philippines, specifically, the research effort for long-tailed macaques is very limited, and I think it's mentoring younger generation of researchers can help in addressing this problem in terms of research gaps on long-tailed macaques. And of course, in the next 5 years, I would like to see changes in people's perspectives and narratives about long-tailed macaques, which are very important in conserving this type of species. I mean, being an adaptive species, a a positive perspective from the society is very helpful.
And if that happens, Leaf, what jobs might such actions generate?
Increasing research for on long-tailed macaques, it means also increasing researchers, many research opportunities, such as field workers, consultants, technical experts, and at the same time in tourism areas where local guides can share information to tourists involving long-tailed macaques and other biodiversity related information in the area.
Where do our knowledge gaps lie with long-tailed macaques?
Back in 2020, we published a research on the gaps in non-human primate studies in the Philippines over the last 3 decades. And in that study, macaques, being the most widespread of the three non-human primates in the Philippines, dominated the literature compared to Philippine tarsier and the Philippine slow loris. However, studies on macaques are dominated by genetics and diseases, which are relevant information to macaques being used for biomedical model research. And studies involving ecology and behavior in the wild is very limited. And in the last 5 years, although the studies on wild populations has increased, it's still dominated by natural history notes, with population counts not yet understood in the Philippine population.
And Leaf, can you suggest a research project for an undergraduate animal management student?
Yes. So I have particularly three in mind. One would be animal behavior, particularly in the growing field of animal culture, where behaviors can develop within a particular population or particular troop of long-tailed macaques, which has our team observed in some of the troops we studied in the Philippines, where some behaviors are unique to a particular troop. And this concept of animal culture is very important for management purposes, particularly if targeting a particular troop, because one management strategy can have differences from one troop to another. And I would also like to highlight the need for the population count all throughout the Philippines, because most of the studies, particularly nowadays, involving long-tailed macaques are focused in the southern Philippines, particularly in Mindanao. And it is also important, in order to conserve long-tailed macaques, is always to consider the social part. Incorporating social studies in long-tailed macaque conservation is crucial. Long-tailed macaques are very adaptive, and can, they will use human-dominated landscapes as part of their habitat.
I'm putting you on the spot a bit here, but what about primates in a biomedical setting? What jobs are there with them in that context?
Of course, it's a being researchers of biomedical fields, and there are actually still work or jobs that can be that are being offered when you study with the biomedical fields. And I would like to highlight a maybe a researcher that will focus on the welfare and of the animals. When you study long-tailed macaques for as model for um, biomedical studies, I think it's very important to make sure that the welfare is still there.
In the context of primatology in general, are there any practices or protocols that you would like to see changed among your colleagues and peers?
In terms of writing, maybe research involving long-tailed macaques and other primates, I think it's a good practice that using neutral terms in describing behaviors of monkeys is very important. So particularly, some researchers, including me in the past, has used the term pest behaviors in describing monkey foraging in farms. But actually, those are just normal behaviors of monkeys in response to changing their environment. I think it's a one step closer in order to changing the narratives of the community towards long-tailed macaques.
Oh, that's fantastic. And Leaf, do you have any advice for someone applying for research funding? What should they include in a proposal?
And this is based on my experience, because long-tailed macaques in the Philippines is not considered as charismatic. It cannot generate fund, unlike in other charismatic species such as Philippine eagles. What I can advise to someone that will apply for research funding involved to study long-tailed macaques is to highlight its importance in the ecosystem. A good example is always what I did, because long-tailed macaque is a preferred prey of the Philippine eagle, which is the national bird of the Philippines. That's where I tried to connect the importance of the monkey, why it's important to conserve monkeys in order to save the ecosystem, including the Philippine eagle. And another advice that I can share is connect the study with the most recent issues that's happening worldwide to your studies involving long-tailed macaques, such as health, maybe zoonotic parasites, that is zoonotic parasites, diseases, and climate change. Those are crucial issues that needs to be addressed, and you can link long-tailed macaque conservation to those issues to gain research funding.
What are the other species that you work on again? Did you say you work with slow lorises?
Yes. So two interests, another two primate species in the Philippines that I have interest in studying are the Philippine tarsiers and the Philippines loloris. But the Philippines loloris is very restricted in some parts of the Philippines, which is can only be found in the Sulu archipelago, the southern part of the Mindanao island. Oh no, Mindanao region, and the Philippine tarsiers. Those are also two of my interest animals to study.
Mhm. I'm guessing the status of the long-tailed macaque is that it's very common, whereas it is the Philippine tarsier and the slow loris. Is the information data deficient on those species?
The data for the Philippine tarsier was once concentrated in a particular island in the Philippines, that's Bohol Island, but recently it has other islands or other populations of Philippine tarsier in some islands in the Philippines also recently recognized. But the Philippines Loloris is data deficient. For the past several years, there's no studies even in the population, even behaviors, even how it interacts with the locals. We don't know anything about the Philippines loloris in the Philippines because Philippines loloris are found in also in Borneo, and most of the assessments are conducted in Borneo and not in the Philippines.
Is there anything that you'd like to add?
Yes, so I would like to thank you, John, for this opportunity for me to share my insights and my experiences involving long-tailed macaque conservation. This is the conservation is very challenging and needs more people, particularly long-tailed macaques are present in a wide range of distribution, and that needs and I need to highlight there the need for collaboration and the need for more researchers to in order to save and conserve the species. Thank you very much, John.
Leif, you are a zoologist, wildlife photographer, and teacher. Thank you so much for being on the Practical Animal channel. Leif Gamalo.
Thank you very much.